Hey everyone, it's Emily here from Phoenix Gateway. How are we today? I'm really well. I wanted to take the opportunity to read something that I wrote back 14 years ago in 2009. I actually don't even remember writing it, and there was two parts to this story that I'd written, but I'm going to read the first part out now. The reason I'm doing this is because I went to write my newsletter this morning and thinking, well, what is it that I want to put in it? So for those who know me, and if you do follow me, you'll know that where I feel very aligned is to create transformational tours. And the reason being is because through my own experiences of what I have been through, I found the way that I healed on a really large scale was to actually travel, but to travel to certain sacred sites around the world. And I went on these sacred journeys. And it was in 2018 that I went for the first time to Egypt. And at the time, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know why. Well, I knew there were aspects of why I was there, but when I arrived, I didn't really love the place. I was like, oh, this is not probably my cup of tea. And I remember thinking to myself, there's a reason why I'm here. There's a reason why I'm here. And apart from going through certain aspects of healing that I knew had to occur, and also because of things that I had channeled, there was another thing that was just at me going, I'm still not sure why I'm here. I'm still not sure why I'm here. And it wasn't until the last couple of days that I was there that I realized that the next stage of my journey, the next part of, what I am here to create are transformational tours. And Seed of the Soul was birthed in 2018 as well. So I think it's important that when people are looking at, spending money and going on these sacred tours, that it's also important that they understand the people that they are traveling with. And who are taking the tours, and do you align to where these people are at? So without further ado, I would like to start reading what I have written back in 2009. And I'd love to know any comments. So anything you'd like to add, please do under the comment section on this video. So, my story, part 1. On March 2nd, 2004, I lost my husband to cancer. He was the breadwinner, the father to our 4 children, and an exceptionally gifted and talented man. Our lives were based around family, friends, and work. I looked after the children whilst he made money for us to survive and live comfortably. My life was based around the home, cleaning, cooking, and raising 4 children. In May 1999, my husband Robert was out riding his motorbikes with his mates. I received a phone call later in the day to inform me that Robert crashed his bike and that they were on their way to Knott's Private Hospital. I remember being furious. At this stage, I had 3 kids at home and my youngest was only 3 weeks old. I went over to the hospital to see Rob. He was in pain but getting himself high on happy gas all the same. After an x-ray, it was determined that he would need a titanium rod and pins put into his bone to hold it together and allow healing to occur. This was to remain in for a year. It was also apparent that there was blood in his urine, so they decided to do a CAT scan to make sure there was no internal damage. He received the all clear, but the x-ray showed up a small lump in his stomach, which needed further investigation. We followed through with a series of investigations, and the diagnosis made was that he had a benign tumour called a leiomyoma. The outcome for Rob to have yearly CAT scans and to keep an eye on it, but we were told not to worry. 12 months later, he did just that. He had a follow-up scan and it showed no growth. We accepted this and were happy that we had been actively following up on the medical advice given. Late January 2002, Rob started experiencing pain in his stomach. He went to the doctor, and for him to go to a doctor really meant he was sick. The doctor told him he was suffering from reflux and prescribed Zantac for him. Rob informed him of the previous CAT scans, and so the doctors decided to do another scan to check. The result put us both in shock. It was totally surreal, and we were finding it hard to grasp the concept of what we were being told. We were sent off to a specialist who ended up ordering a CT-guided biopsy. The results were grim. Rob had a rare form of tumour called a desmoplastic small round cell tumour. It was so rare that the results needed to be sent off to Sydney to a specialist lab to make the grim diagnosis. The prognosis was a killer. We were told he would have 6 months to live and would need palliative care. As a nurse, I totally understood the whole dark outlook. In March of 2002, Rob started chemotherapy. He responded so well in the first 6 months that his oncologist, who is definitely an earth angel, sent him off to the head specialist at the Austin Hospital. The decision was made for Rob to have what they called a Whipple's procedure. This meant he would lose part of his stomach and maybe part of his pancreas, and plus or minus any other abnormalities that were found. As the cancer was also in his liver, they wanted to burn out the tumours that were visible. After an intense wait, Rob went into recovery. We spoke to the surgeon. We were told 40% of the distal end of his stomach was removed. His pancreas was left untouched. Unfortunately, due to the spread of the cancer to in his liver, they were unable to burn out the cancer. The cancer was quite widespread. They removed other tumours that were visible. As always, Rob remained optimistic. He made great progress, and 6 weeks after his surgery, he had an intense 4 to 6 weeks of radiation therapy. This consisted of daily visits to our hospital. It made him so sick that by the end he would vomit before he even went in for treatment. After a short break, he resumed chemotherapy. In January 2003, we were hit with the news that the disease was spreading. The oncologist exhausted every drug available to him. He was a true advocate to his patients and made sure that he would get his hands on any treatment he felt would greatly assist his patients. In September of that year, all I could feel was anger, hurt, and the injustice that had been served foremost to my husband and then to our family. We discussed in great length talking to a lawyer and seeing if there was a case for malpractice. Rob agreed to us following up on the matter. I made an appointment, and together we spent time and spoke in great length of the injustice that had been given. The lawyer told us we had a case as well as a good chance. Rob pulled me aside one night and told me that if we follow it through, that he could not be involved as he had only one focus, and that was to fight the disease that was taking over his body. By November of the same year, I was starting to see a change in Rob. He was getting weaker, losing weight, and finding it harder to go into work. Robert refused to let his disease hinder his life. He made a point of continuing his day-to-day living as best he could. By this time, he was starting to work more from home. He had an IT person come in and set him up so he could access all work information from home and continue his job. My background is in nursing, so I had the knowledge to know what was happening to him on a physiological as well as physical basis. This was starting to destroy me. I was finding it harder to cope with looking after 4 children as well as nursing a terminally ill husband. My family on both sides were amazing. When I needed some time out or a hand, they were there. My father sat with Rob through nearly every chemotherapy session, never leaving his side. My mother, sisters, and in-laws would come in and help in the home. In the few months leading up to his death, he spent some time in hospital. He's needed to have his abdomen drained on 2 occasions due to the discomfort it was causing him. He was finding eating a hardship. Even to go to the toilet was a struggle. In the month leading up to his death, he spent more and more time in bed. Within this time frame, I found myself grieving uncontrollably. I went to the doctor and was prescribed antidepressants. These certainly helped me in my time of need. A month before his death, we hired a houseboat and the whole family went to Echuca for the weekend. Rob struggled but was determined. He never saw himself dying. So to him, his body was failing, but his mindset told him to keep fighting. His younger brother and 2 kids came. My in-laws, my parents, and his best friend all made the journey. It was hard but emotional and enjoyable all the same. At the end of the weekend, we made our way back home. The next morning, we were awoken to the sad news that the brother who had just been away with us overdosed on a concoction of heroin and speed. This was not only a blow, but a total tragic and unforeseeable event. He had been a drug user from the age of 15, and I remember his mum telling me that her worst fear was to find David dead. She did not find him, thank goodness, but it sent shockwaves through the family and friend community. The tragedy of it all was that they knew their eldest son was dying from a disease he had no control over, and their middle son lost his life to a substance he should never have been using. In the days leading up to the funeral, Rob had to go back into hospital. I still remember the sadness of having to pick him up and dress him in the hospital to take him to his brother's funeral. A week later, Rob went back into hospital. There was nothing anyone could do for him. Rob, still at this point, could not see what was to face him. He did not believe death was an option. After a lengthy conversation with his oncologist, I asked him to please inform Rob of the inevitable. He entered Rob's room, and at this point he was surrounded by my parents and his younger brother. His doctor, in the most realistic way possible, explained to Rob he was going to die and that he should go home if that was where he wanted to be. Up until now, I had been taking care of all Rob's nursing and home care with the assistance of palliative care. 2 days before he died, we were able to organise a special bed and all medical supplies to be delivered to our home so that his wish could be honoured. He asked me if it would be okay to die at home, and I felt I had to honour this as my background allowed me to deal with this situation in both a personal and professional way. At this point, I had already made all funeral arrangements. It was a very hard job to carry out as Rob was still in denial of death. 48 hours before he died, around 2 a.m, he asked me to cuddle him. For the first time, he told me he knew he was going to die. He said that this did not scare him, but what hurt him the most was that he had to leave his family. At this point, I discussed the arrangement I had made for him. I told him he would be buried next to his brother, and we agreed that we only wanted a celebrant to do the service, as neither of us believed in God, considering what was about to happen. The other matter that was discussed was to give me control over all financial aspects of our lives and giving me the passwords to all accounts. Rob never, throughout his illness, lost his mental capacity. He was as sharp in his thinking 2 days before he died as he was at any point in his life. The discussion that took place lifted so much weight off my shoulders. Rob died on Tuesday the 2nd of March 2004 at 6 a.m. It was peaceful. All our family and his closest friends sat vigil. About a minute before he died, he opened his eyes and I told him I loved him. His reply to me was, "I love you too." These were his last words. We watched the sunrise after having called the doctor to certify his death and also call the funeral home. I woke our children so they could say their final goodbyes. This was heartbreaking. I have to say, which I use quite often, something I picked up through my readings. For every crisis, there is a gift. Sometimes these gifts aren't apparent straight away. In this instance, I had to go through the grieving process as well as my children. I had to live the physical and mental pain and learn how to rise above it. What became evident was that Rob's passing unlocked a door. It opened up a realm I had no idea existed or believed in. I started feeling things, hearing things. I started taking notice of what was going on around me and found myself talking to people I felt I could trust and others who I knew had some knowing of what I was experiencing. Things started happening quickly and I found myself leaning towards the spiritual, holistic side that was being shown to me. Throughout this process, I was introduced to my guides and the biggest thing for me, crystals. That was at that time. This path was opened up and thrown at me in a good way and at a fast pace. It has helped me heal my aspects of my life and helped me through the grief. It took me 2 years to get over the hurt and anger of my husband leaving me, but what I realized was that it wasn't his fault. Deep down I knew this, but it was all part of the grieving process I had to endure to make the person I am today. What I found as I started to feel comfortable with myself and remove the fears of being alone and being a single mum to 4 beautiful children is that Rob taught me courage and strength. He showed me that in life you never give up. You fight for what you believe in. I cannot lie to you and tell you that life is easy. It's not. You fight for what you believe in. I just repeated myself. I cannot lie to you. Maybe I need to say it twice. I cannot lie to you and tell you that life is easy. It's not. You work at what is in front of you and you persist. Children are resilient, but at the same time, their grief is very real and each of them grieves at different times and in different ways. I don't believe that grief necessarily goes. What I believe is that for every hurdle you cross, you learn to deal with it in a specific way. And if or when that grief issue arises again, you can deal with it on a totally different level and look at it in a different light. It does get easier. All that we encompass in life is part of our journey. We are here to learn and to teach from it. To let you know, we did start a malpractice litigation and it took a long time, but in the end, we did win. And you know, I wrote this back in 2009. That's 14 years ago. And I was talking then about how I got over so much anger and grief, but it wasn't until 2010 that I actually went on a sacred journey to Sedona. And it was there that I realized I hadn't actually released what I thought I had and what I was still holding on to. Understand that, you know, the patterns that we go through are there for us throughout our lifetime. And we will be triggered by different aspects within our lives on a daily basis. But each time, you know, that saying we peel away at things like an onion, it's so true because we learn to deal with it in different ways. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for listening to who I am. And if anything, to be able to journey, to go deep within on your own self-healing and self-discovery is the most powerful aspect that you can do to help yourself at any given time. The work is the inner work that we do on self. What we do on the externals, the emotions, you know, what we go through on the external. And these are the catalysts for the healing that we are here to create on our own journeys of self-healing and self-discovery. Remember this, you chose this journey for a reason. I look forward to speaking with you and telling you the next part of my story soon. Bye for now.